middle school. I just wanted to go through some of the basic steps for this Matisse inspired paper shape collage that we're doing. I wanted to remind you that you are able to work as a single artist or in a pair or as a trio. So you can group work if you like, you can do it on your own if you want to, giving you all the choices. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is to figure out what is your subject matter. Matisse often created his collages or his artworks based on things that he had experienced in his life that made an impression on him. So, for instance, it could be sports, it could be books, movies, it could be music, it could be dance, or a trip you took to a particular part of the world, or camping, the ocean, so many different things. You can make it as personal as you want, but if you're in a group, you all have to be on board with the same subject matter. So you're going to be using 12 by 18 construction paper as your background. And before you get started, what I'd like for you to do is to take a piece of Post-it note with the lines on it, and I'm going to give everybody a Post-it note. I need for you to write your title of your subject on the top of the Post-it, and then I want you, or with your group, to brainstorm all the different things that come to mind when you are thinking about that particular subject. So as an example, my subject that I picked for this demonstration is tidal pools. When I lived in California when I was younger, I used to love to go down to the water and play in the tidal pools. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what a tidal pool is, it's an area of, it's beach, but it's not sandy. It has a lot of rocks, and the tide comes in, and there are lots of little sea creatures in there. Some of the things that I wrote down were rocks, sea anemones, seaweed, starfish, crabs and hermit crabs, urchins, limpets, seagulls, turtles, sand, and water. So those are kinds of the things that I was thinking about as I was thinking about tidal pools. So the next step is going to be choosing colors for your artwork. So for my artwork, I started out, I decided, and this is a little smaller because I need for you to be able to see it on this little screen. So I have this, this is going to be my background, this dark gray, because it reminds me of rocks. And then I picked out, these are the other colors I picked. I have some purples, right, because the sea urchins and some of the limpets have a purple to them. This kind of peachy color, not sure how well you can see that with these fluorescent lights. Some white, that reminded me of, you know, when the water comes crashing in and it makes the kind of bubbly, foamy white part. Some blue, light blue, maybe for some water, and a lighter gray. And then, because one of the things that I really like about the tidal pools are the starfish. And when I think of starfish, I oftentimes think of the orange starfish. So these are kind of the colors that, my color scheme that I'm working with, right? So once I pick out my colors, I am going to just start cutting out shapes. Your pencil is for brainstorming, and then it is for writing your name and any of the other members of your group on the back of your background paper. Okay, and then the pencil goes away. Goodbye, pencil. And then you're going to take your colors and your shapes for your colors, and you're going to just, with your scissors, right, no drawing at first, we're just going to go with our scissors, and you're going to start cutting out shapes, things that you think of. So one of my, I'm going to use this green, one of my things that I had written down here was seaweed, and this is a very small piece. I could find a bigger piece, but I could actually, now that I think about it, because it's got these nice little dots kind of cut out of it already, right? And I can just kind of use that, and I'm just gonna lay it down. I'm just gonna make a stack, because what I'm trying to do is I'm gonna try to cut out a variety of different shapes, abstract shapes. We want the least amount of information to show you what it is. So for instance, let's see, if I was going to make a snail, or maybe a hermit crab, right? I might say to myself, well, you know, he has a spire, he's got a shell, and then he's got some eye stalks, right? And then, I know you guys are thinking about Gary right now. Let's see, and then maybe he's got some little claws. I'm really just freestyling this. I guess Gary was a snail. I'm kind of making a hermit crab here, so that would be more like, I don't even know what. Okay, so this little shape right here. Okay, I was kind of thinking that these would be the little eye stalks and these would be his little crab claws. But it's a very abstract shape, okay? So it really could be anything. It could be a radish, I don't know. So I just kind of want you to collect a bunch of these shapes. And then once you have a bunch of these shapes collected, and I have already pre-cut a bunch of shapes. Once you have all these shapes collected, then I want you to flip this over and forget about what it is. Forget about what all these things are supposed to be. And now I just want you to see them as shapes. Okay, don't think about what the shapes represent. Right, I've got a little star shape. I cut out some gray lumpy shapes that kind of reminded me of rocks. So I'm going to lay these down now. I did want to remind you also that when Matisse was working with his collages, he would often have kind of what seemed to be random geometric shapes kind of placed right on top of the background before he would put his organic shapes on top, because we were talking about geometric versus organic shapes. So, you know, one of these I could put my green leaf right here, my little seaweed, right? But he might have some other colored pieces kind of placed in the background in a way that he found to be pleasing. So my example didn't have those things, but I don't know if you can see. So what I'm going to do now is I'm not going to lay these down in a way that makes them look like the ocean's on the bottom and the sky is on the top and the sun is in the sky, and you know what I'm saying? I don't want it to look like a photograph or a scene. I want you to look at these shapes and think only about the composition. Is it balanced? Do they look good on the paper? I actually had cut more shapes. I cut this shape. I thought like a snail or a hermit crab, and then I ended up not using it, right? This was going to be like a limpet or a barnacle. I decided not to use it. So, so then what you're going to do is you're just going to start moving your pieces around, right? And seeing where you think they look good. Take your time, okay? Don't glue anything down until you have your whole design, oops, worked out. And don't forget that, right, I cut out, I cut out this little starfish. But one of the other things that Matisse would do is use the negative shape as well as the positive shape. So I can put this little starfish down over here, but then I can maybe find a way to use this negative shape. Maybe I will cut it down a little smaller and use this negative shape somewhere else. I can also layer other shapes underneath it, right? I'm not sure like that, but I'll move it around. Anyway, so what I'm kind of trying to do, I'm trying to balance this orange and the shape of the starfish. I have these little, I love these little pieces, these little pokey pieces right here, right? And because one of the things I was talking about earlier were anemones and urchins. I tried to make an anemone, but it looked more like a squiddly diddly. I'm not sure what that even is, but that's what it looked like. And I have some little random pieces here. Anyway, so my point is I want you to cut out the pieces in the simplest shapes you can. And then once they're all cut out, I want you to start placing them on the paper just by the way they look, not by what they represent. So if you're making a city, you don't have to put buildings on the bottom of the edge of the paper because that's where buildings sit. They sit on the ground. Or put the things that are in the sky, right? Matisse was trying to give you a feeling of something, right? Where you would look at it and go, hey, that kind of looks like a fish, or that reminds me of a bird. Okay, he was trying not to be completely obvious about the whole thing and just give you a feeling of it. So that's kind of where we're trying to go. Yeah, and that's it. So that was just kind of a reminder of how I want you to go about this, and I want you to have a good time, and I'm excited to see what you come up with. Thanks.